Hello everyone, and today we're going to be having a look at the Despia branded deck. Now of course, the majority of the support for this type of archetype hasn't been released in the Master Duel yet, and probably will in the next sort of 4, 5, 6 months. However, I just wanted to have a sort of preliminary look at it here. A few people have been using it in ranked with some sort of success. It's always been a deck I've been curious about, but not had the time to explore. The list you're seeing in front of you is pretty much what we were using. We ended up cutting the Edge, Imp, and the Frightfur. Simply bricked far too often on the monsters. We're playing it going second, basically, with a big focus on Super Poly and the Kaijus, things like that. We're also playing the Fusion Destiny engine as well. So fairly straightforward Despia stuff, not going to spend too much time on it right now. We'll circle back around and look at some of the more specific cards at the end of the video. So let's get on then with game number 1. Okay, so with game number 1, we're going to be keeping it nice and simple here. Our opponent only sets one card and passes. Now, obviously not the most formidable showing from our opponent here, so this replay is going to mainly be to show sort of what the deck aims to do. It's going to be a quick Despia OTK here, so we're going to summon Alabar by discarding Tragedy. Alabar will then search our deck for a branded spell or trap. Tragedy, when discarded, will search for a Despia monster, but he tries to negate our Tragedy. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the Tragedy back to our hand to stop it from being affected by Call by the Grave, and fusion summon using it and the Dramaturge in our hand. Sorry, not the Dramaturge, the Fallen of Albaz on our hand to search for Dramaturge off of the Tragedy's effect. Now that it's no longer banished off of Call by the Grave, it still resolves. We grab our Despia Invader. We use it to fuse together our Dramaturge and our Alabar, because when Dramaturge is used for a fusion summon, it gets to resummon itself. And our opponent very quickly gives up. That's 2500, 2500, 3k. What those monsters actually do then, the Quiritis, what it can do is it can reduce the attack points of all monsters on the field that aren't level 8 or higher fusion monsters to 0. Your Masquerade Dragon means that your opponent has to pay 600 life points every time they want to activate a card effect, which isn't a lot, but it can come up, and you know, especially in a later game state where, you know, they're a wee bit lower on life points. It can also resummon itself from the graveyard if your opponent has an extra deck monster on board, so that's good to know. And then Dramaturge, if your opponent summons an extra deck monster, Dramaturge can basically negate something on the field. So very simple. This was a super quick showing just to show off some of the most basic cards. The Alabar, the Tragedy, the fusions, that's pretty much it. The objective of the deck is putting lethal on board and just swinging for a game. That's why we're playing it going second. But yeah, so that'll do for game number 1. Very quick one. So we're going to move on then to game number 2, which is a little bit longer. Okay, so game number 2. We're looking at a somewhat similar hand. Our opponent's actually playing Dark Magician. So we activate the Maxi on the activation of Magician Soul, so we can draw a card every time he special summons. He lets that go through. Magician Soul, special summon, set 1 pass, so that's good. We stop whatever plays he was aiming to do. So we draw into a branded opening. We drew into a branded red off Maxi, so it wasn't much. We summon the Fallen of Albaz. We discard a card from our hand then, and allows us to fusion summon using monsters on our opponent's side of the field as well. He goes to Maxi, and just like before, we're going to chain our branded in red so we can use it to fusion summon before the Maxi resolves, so he doesn't get to draw a card. We're going to summon the Masquerade Dragon by returning the Tragedy. Fallen of Albaz is going to fuse with his Magician Souls to summon the Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. Now, the Dramaturge that was used in the fusion as well as the Tragedy both resolve whenever they're banished for the fusion summon. Tragedy will add to deck a ad libitum, or I always mispronounce that one. Then Dramaturge will resummon itself back to the field. Now, the Masquerade Dragon, because it was summoned from branded in red, cannot attack directly this turn, so that's not lethal. He goes to activate his spell card there, the fusion summon. He has to pay 600 to do so. On the summon, we're going to negate its effects, not that it's going to do anything. We swing in with the Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, just crash in to beat it. He pays another 600 to summon his 2 monsters out. We can attack his monsters of the Masquerade Dragon, so we were able to take out the Dark Magician Girl. We just couldn't attack directly, so that's fine. So it's looking very good for us here. So he summons his Magician's Rod, pays 600 to search for the Dark Magical Circle, and then he has to pay 600 again to use the circle. So you can see how this sort of 600 damage per activation can really rack up over time. He has to pay another 600 to activate Magician Souls to send a card to the grave. He's going to resummon the Dark Magician then out to the field. With that, he's going to pay 600 again to trigger his circle to banish our Masquerade Dragon finally. So he's going to activate Magician's Salvation, which will grab Eternal Soul from the deck. That's going to allow him to summon a Dark Magician every turn. And with that circle up, every time he summons a Dark Magician, he gets to banish one of our cards. So that's a big threat. He goes for a wee link chain here to go into Predaplant Verte Anaconda. The Dramaturge on its summon is going to negate it preemptively. We don't want to be dealing with DPE here. Then he's going to go into Selene. So he's going for the Access Code Talker play. So we're going to chain onto that our Branded in red. So that's going to basically add back either a Despia or Fallen of Albaz in the grave, then allow us to fusion summon by banishing monsters from our hand or field. So we're going to summon out our Despia and Quiritis. We're going to then use the effect of the 2 banished monsters from the fusion summon. The Dramaturge of Despia is going to resummon itself, and the Ad Libitum is going to resummon the Masquerade Dragon. Selena, however, is going to chain to that. She's going to resummon the Dark Magicians from the graveyard. This is preparing for a link summon into the Access Code Talker. Now he's got a Link 3 and another monster on board. He can go into it here. So there's the Access Code Talker. Obviously, we can't respond to his card effects, but upon the resolution of his boost, Despia and Quiritis is going to reduce him to 0. He's going to start using Access Code Talker's effect. He's going to start popping cards here. So he pops the back row, pops the Masquerade, pops the Dramaturge. And lastly then, he goes to pop our Quiritis, but another effective Branded opening is you can banish it from the graveyard to protect a fusion monster. Now, because he controls a link monster, our Masquerade Dragon comes back at the end of the turn. So we're not going to waste too much time on going into extra plays here. We know he has that Eternal Soul to banish a card, so he reduces Access Code Talker to 0. It doesn't matter which of these 2 monsters he decides to banish. All we need to do is swing into it with the other. So he's going to use Magician's Salvation as well. He's going to summon a Dark Magician girl from the graveyard. Magician's Rod then is going to sacrifice the Dark Magician and add himself back to hand. Then we're going to hit the Dark Magician girl with Call by the Grave. Again, not that it matters. But we just, again, we might as well. The game's coming to a close here. Let's be real. We're going to swing with the Quiritis. Circle's going to banish the Quiritis. Its effect is going to summon Alibur from deck. Alibur's going to add Despia Theater, but it doesn't matter. We're just going to swing with the Masquerade Dragon, and that is game. So, Dark Magician isn't exactly the most meta of decks, but he put up a very, very good fight. Like that Eternal Soul combo with the Magician Circle, as well as extending in the Access Code Talker. Very, very impressive from him. And again, another display of how the deck functions in terms of this sort of powerful OTK type strategy. So what we're going to do then, now we have a rough idea. We didn't play any other cards there. We're just getting a feel for the most prominent plays. Fusing with the Dramaturge, discarding the Despian Tragedy to get searching, Alibur to get searching, Dramaturge gets summoning, Ad Libitum gets summoning. That's generally how it sort of works. You're just looping through your fusion cards and constantly searching for more and more resources. So that's grand. That's going to take care of duel number 2. Let's get on then to number 3, which is a bit of a longer one, as you can probably tell from the screen. Okay, so duel number 3. And this is exactly why I didn't like running the Frightfur engine. This Edge and Chain in our hand is a real pain. In this version of the deck, we only had the 1, so it's essentially a dead card, which, you know, you hate to see. He goes for Maxi off the bat. We decide to Call by the Grave. I debated just letting this go and not doing anything this turn, but I really wanted to try my luck off this Allure, and I didn't want it to be, you know, too little too late type thing. So we're going to activate the Allure. We're going to draw 2, and then we're going to banish a Dark Monster in our hand. Afterwards, he's going to activate the Prank Kids Pandemonium, which is going to allow him to fusion summon on our turn into the Weather Washer. Now, the Weather Washer contributed itself to summon a couple of Prank Kids from the graveyards, and they can't be destroyed by, I believe it's battle, basically. So he's protecting himself here from that. So we have the Weather Washer resolving first to summon out Lampseas and Dropseas. Lampseas inflicts 500 damage and summons the Wind one. Then he gains 1,000 life and summons the Earth one. So he's got 4 Prank Kids on the board. We're just going to go straight into your Fusion Destiny, and we'll normal summon the Edge and Chain. It is big enough to take out some of the smaller Prank Kids, so that's fine. He goes into his big fusion monster here, so this one allows him to tribute itself to destroy all the monsters on my field. He can also then tribute other link monsters from its graveyard to also use that effect. We're going to swing in. He's going to use the effect of the Trap and Grave to reduce our attack by 300, 100 per card returned. Then he's going to activate the big battle monster, the big battle butler. that will tribute itself to destroy all of our cards. So what we're going to do is preemptively pop up our Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, get rid of at least one of his monsters, and our Phoenix Enforcer will be coming back next turn. The Edge Imp is going to then search the deck for the Freight for Patchwork. If we were playing a second Edge Imp, that would be extremely useful, but we're not in this version of the deck, so if you're going to be playing that engine, play 2 of each at least. Don't be playing just the one Edge Imp. This is a good example as to why. So our Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer comes on back. We're not going to be using its effect just yet. We need to time it right. He goes into the doodle doodle do, and this is when we decide to destroy. Yes, we don't want to give it the chance to tribute for any more additional prank kids for the graveyard. It's not a quick effect to do so, so we're gonna catch it early basically. He searches for another Pandemonium, but because we destroyed early, he does not have a lot of resources to start fusion summoning. He only has the one prank hit on board. So that's good. We're limiting his fusion plays. Then from that, we draw into another Patchwork, which is tragic because it's a useless card at the moment. So we're going to swing in, take out the Lampseeds, then we're going to use the Phoenix Enforcer to destroy the back row, but the back row is skill drain. So that essentially nullifies our Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer. It's just a 2500 beater at this point. So we're going to set a second copy of Super Poly and we're going to pass. We're still somewhat in control of this, but that skill drain is going to slow us down quite a lot. He sets one and passes. He doesn't have a lot of resources himself. We draw into Poly, which again, if we had the Edge Imp, would have been better. So we're just going to swing for 25. We'll take any damage we can get. This is going to be a bit of a grind game here to bring it down. He's going to go into Prank Kid's place. That's going to let him search his deck here for Dropsies. Then he's going to link summon using that into the Meow Meow Moo. So that's going to trigger the Dropsies. He's going to gain 1000 life, I believe, and then summon another Prank Kid from deck. Yes, he is. Prank Kid's place as well is going to be doing the stuff that I'm not going to read. So he summons out the Lampseeds and he fusion summons into Rocket Ride. Now, before he can do anything else fancy with the Rocket Ride, just like before, we don't want him tributing to go into anything special. We're going to use the Super Poly, ditch one of the dead Freight for cards, and we're going to fuse our Destiny Hero with his Rocket Ride into Predaplant Dragos Despia. Again, we just don't want him to constantly be looping his resources from the graveyard. We want to maintain control and presence over the field. He's not playing a lot of dark monsters, so we need to use Super Poly and what few things we get. Luckily, we draw into Dramaturge, and because we have the Dasher in the graveyard, once while it's in the grave, it lets you special summon a monster that you draw. Then we'll set all our cards so we have nothing in hand, so we can use Celestial's effect to draw 2. We're going to fusion summon now into the Despia and Quirites. That's going to allow us to trigger the effects of both the Dramaturge and the Tragedy, which is a combo we've seen in both the duels prior to this as well. We grab Alibur from the deck, we use Dramaturge of Despia, summon it to the field, then we're going to get swinging. So we're swinging with the Dragos Despia, swing with Dramaturge, and then with the Despia and Quirites. And now in the battle phase, we're going to use Super Polymerization to fuse into the Masquerade Dragon, and with that, that is game. So yes, there were quite a lot of deck cards there. Luckily, we were able to maintain control over the field long enough for us to draw into what we needed. However, that's a good sort of display as to why I took that engine out of the deck. However, if you were simply playing a second Edge Imp, that sort of thing wouldn't have happened. So take that as you will. It's either a lesson to not play it at all or a lesson to play a second Edge Imp. But either way, that's a lesson well learned. Let's move on to game number 4 then, and the final one for the video. Alright, so last game of the video here, and we're going to be going second, which is ideal. However, our opponent just sets one and passes, which really sort of throws off the tempo of the deck here. We don't really have a lot of plays we could make because our opponent didn't make plays. So we're just going to set one. We could have technically gone into the Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, but we don't want to jump the gun just yet. If he's set one and passed, then we have time. I'm not worried about this person trying to OTK me at the moment, so he's going to summon the Live Twins. Because of Maxi, he's only going to special summon one of them. He's going to swing for his 1000 damage, and he's going to pass it back to us. That's why, in this game in particular, I know Live Twins, they're a good deck, but they're not good at pushing for lethal, so I'm not overly worried at the minute about trying to get everything established right away. I'm not going to panic about 1000 damage a turn. So we will draw 2, banish a monster, the Radiant in our hand, and then we're going to set Call by the Grave. He's going to go into the Sky Cavalry here. He's going to swing directly for 2k, He's going to use that for the Downward Magician. Now we realize right away that he's going into Zeus. If I'm going to be drawing cards, I want to draw at least one more card, because this Zeus is going to be problematic. And we draw the Fallen of Albaz, which is a fantastic pull to be getting. He's going to use Zeus to clear the whole field apart from himself, so we're going to use our Call by the Grave just to get rid of the, I think it was the Downward, sorry, the Sky Cavalry. Which is honestly, it doesn't really mean anything. He did have a set imperm, which was, you know, I'll trade a super poly for an imperm any day of the week, that's fine. So we summon the Fallen of Albaz. We don't use Albaz's effect, we instead use the super poly so he can't chain his Zeus to it. So we're gonna summon the Albion. Albion on summon is gonna let us banish from our hand, field, or graveyard to conduct another fusion summon. He's gonna chain Max C, which is fine. We're gonna banish the Tragedy and the Fallen of Albaz to summon Masquerade. Tragedy then is going to search the deck for the Dramaturge of Despia. We activate Despia Theater of the Branded, fuse our Albion and our Dramaturge for Branded Despia. Dramaturge, when used for a fusion summon, then summons itself back to the field, and then we just swing for lethal damage. As simple as that. As well as the Dramaturge having an active negate, even if he was able to survive that, the Branded Despia also has once per turn add a Predaplant counter, and anything with a Predaplant counter is also negated. So again, very, very powerful showing of the deck there. It shows how quickly and easily it's able to generate these OTKs, how it's able to turn your opponent's resources against them. Sometimes opponents playing slow actually throws the deck off. You would almost rather them make plays so you can capitalize off of it, but either way, we saw the power behind it, you know, getting over a Zeus, getting over some really good plays from another Dark Magician player there. So what we're going to do is have a better look at the deck list, and we'll explain some of the plays we were making throughout that video. So on to the deck list. Okay, so this is the deck list we ended up settling on. Again, the Frightfur Patchwork, you can add it in, take it out at your sort of disposal, your pleasure. This is generally the list we were playing as we were going up. So how does it work? We have a few cards around for consistency. You have Aliber, which when it's normal or special summon, you can add a branded spell or trap from deck to hand. You have Tragedy, which when sent to the graveyard or banished by a card effect, add a Despian monster. So these two are your sort of core consistency cards. They're going to be the ones adding a lot of consistency to your plays. If you want to make those even more consistent, you can consider running something like Foolish Burial to send the Tragedy from the deck to the graveyard to then trigger its effects. That's probably a very strong play. I would more than likely play that over one of these polys. Poly was typically better with the Frightfur stuff. So that's your main consistency cards. The Fallen of Albaz, whenever it's summoned, you get to discard a card to fusion summon using it and one of your opponent's monsters. So that, again, very, very powerful card. We have our Kaijus then, just for tributing opponent's monsters. Then we have these two, which are the big sort of bosses in the main deck. When each of them are used as materials for a fusion summon, the Dramaturge will resummon itself to the field, and it has a once per turn negate whenever your opponent summons something from the extra deck. And the Ad Libitum of Despia, whenever it's used as fusion material, it will resummon a fusion monster back to the field, or I believe it's any level 8 or higher. So level 8 or higher fusion or a Despia monster. So this guy can actually pull back your Destiny Hero Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer if you need to. For example, if it gets tributed or something like that, or banished. So this guy can help bring your Enforcer back as well, which is very, very good to know. It didn't really come up in any of the games, but it's still something to be aware of. We have our typical Fusion Destiny engine. We have Allure of Darkness. We're drawing a bunch of cards. Most of the deck is dark. If you banish the Despian Tragedy off of the Allure of Darkness, you also get a lot more advantage because you're drawing 2 and then searching for 1, so that's fantastic. Despia Theater of the Branded is our primary fusion card. It can be searched by Aliber and allows you to basically fusion summon, and it's a field spell, so it can be used once per turn, so that's fantastic. Branded Opening, special summon a Despia monster from deck, so typically you would use this to special summon your Aliber. If you already have Aliber, you might summon then Dramaturge instead. So Branded Opening, very, very good. Branded in Red is our second fusion spell, basically. So Branded in Red, you will target a Despia or Fallen of Albaz in the graveyard, return it to your hand, then fusion summon by banishing materials from your hand or field. Now, what's important to note, you don't need to use the monster you add back. you can add something back and then use other monsters to do. As you saw in one of the games there, we added back a Fallen of Albaz, but we actually just used other monsters to conduct the fusion summon. So be aware of that. You don't necessarily need to use the monster you add back. And then the rest of it's fairly self-explanatory. Nibiru, Maxi, Ash, because why not? Every deck should be playing them. Super Poly, because your deck is super versatile with lots of fusion monsters here, Fallen of Albaz and Light. So your deck is super versatile with the materials it can use, so quite often you can take your opponent's monsters and use them against them. Other than that, it is a good counter to DPE. And also, again, as I didn't really think about Prank Kids too much when I was building it, but it's a good counter to Prank Kids too. It worked out very well there too. We've Called by the Grave to help protect our plays. This, you can probably cut this, to be honest. I initially was even playing Cross-Hit Designator, but like I realized that this deck doesn't care too much about hand traps, because you're not doing a ton of special summoning, so you don't need to worry too much about Maxi, and you have so much consistency and so much variety with the plays you can make that you don't really care too much about being ashed here and there. So I don't think Cross-Hit Designator was necessary. I do like Call by the Grave, it does come up quite a bit. And then lastly is just Imperm. So that's the list at the minute. The main sort of fusion monsters, most of these are just sort of, you know, super poly targets. You have some Exceed monsters here that we literally never used. Predaplant, Verte, Anaconda for obvious reasons, but again, never used. And then these monsters here, the only one of them you're probably going to actually summon, maybe Sprint using Super Poly, but primarily it's going to be Albion, which allows you to conduct a second fusion summon. Most of the rest of the cards are pretty much just Super Poly targets. Then there's this guy, Despian Pro Skinneon, I'm assuming that says. That one there is like I don't want to call it the big boss of the deck, but it's very good at countering decks that use their extra deck, basically. This was a huge problem during the Fusion Festival, and against any opponent that does sort of cycle through their extra deck, or fusions in particular, things like that, this guy is extremely powerful. But yes, I'll not ramble on too much. There's not really much in the way of combos in this deck. It is very much just you play the cards you have. It's not as if it's some massively complicated piece of machinery. It's fairly simple once you're sort of in the seat and you know what you're doing with the deck and you've got it in your hands. It's very easy to work out. But yes, I'm going to leave it there. You can take that, you can, you know, do what you want with it. Again, the Freight Fur engine, I like the idea of it. I just don't think it worked out whenever I was playing it, so you can try it out as well. But yes, that's all I have to say then on this deck. You can do what you want with it, take it, change it, whatever you want to do. But we're going to leave it for there. See y'all later.